The dust-choked air of Silver Creek, Colorado shimmered in the July heat as Penelope Reed struggled against the iron shackles that bit into her wrists. The year was 1875, and she stood on a crude wooden platform in the center of town, her once fine dress now tattered and soiled from weeks of captivity. Her captors had taken everything from her family's ranch, her dignity, and now they aimed to take her freedom by auctioning her like cattle. "Next up," the auctioneer bellowed, tugging roughly at Penelope's chains, "a fine woman to work your ranch or warm your bed. Strong back, educated too. Bidding starts at $50. Penelope's eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. At 23, she had survived the loss of her parents to typhoid, managed their ranch alone for 2 years, until Silas Thornton, the banker who'd foreclosed on her property, claimed she owed additional debts she could never hope to repay. Though illegal, frontier justice was often whatever powerful men declared it to be. Rough voices called out bids as Penelope stood tall despite her trembling legs. 50, 75, 100. She fought the rising panic as the numbers climbed. These weren't just numbers, they were the years of her life being bartered away. 200, a gruff voice called from the back of the crowd. The crowd parted slightly, revealing a tall figure leaning against a hitching post. Penelope squinted against the sun to see the stranger. His features were shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could make out broad shoulders and a stance that suggested he wasn't a man to be trifled with. 250, countered another voice, Thornton himself, his jowls quivering with indignation that someone might outbid him. 300, the stranger replied without hesitation. The crowd murmured. It was an exorbitant sum, especially in these difficult times when drought had plagued the territory for 2 seasons. "Any other bids?" the auctioneer called, his gaze sweeping the crowd. When silence answered him, he slammed down his gavel. "Sold to the gentleman in the back." Penelope's heart sank as the auctioneer shoved her toward the edge of the platform. Her new owner approached, his spurs jangling with each step. She caught her first clear glimpse of him, a weathered face with eyes the color of a summer storm, perhaps 30 years of age. His clothes were dusty but of good quality, marking him as a man of some means. When he reached her, he produced a key from his pocket. "Where did you get that?" The auctioneer demanded. "From the sheriff's desk while he was passed out drunk," the stranger replied calmly. "Figure he won't mind me borrowing it." Before anyone could protest, he unlocked Penelope's shackles. They fell to the wooden platform with a heavy clank. She rubbed her raw wrists, confusion mingling with fear. "What are you doing?" she whispered. The cowboy looked directly into her eyes. "You belong only to yourself, madam. No man has the right to own another." "Now see here," Thornton pushed his way forward, face red with anger. "I paid good money to settle her debts and bring her to auction. You can't just..." In one fluid motion, the stranger drew his revolver and pointed it at Thornton's chest. "I believe I just did." "This is outrageous, Sheriff," Thornton bellowed, but the town's lawman was nowhere to be seen. "The way I see it," the stranger continued, his voice even but carrying an undercurrent of steel, "this lady was brought here against her will. That's kidnapping where I come from." "She owes me money," Thornton sputtered. "Then I reckon we can settle that debt properly through legal channels." The stranger kept his revolver steady. "I've got $300 right here that says she's free to go." He reached into his coat with his free hand and tossed a leather pouch at Thornton's feet. "Take it, and consider the matter closed." Thornton stared at the pouch, then at the gun, then at the determined face of the man holding it. With a snarl, he snatched up the money. "This isn't over," he threatened. "I believe it is," the stranger replied. He turned to Penelope. "Madam, if you'd care to accompany me, I have a horse waiting." Still stunned by the rapid turn of events, Penelope could only nod. As they walked away from the platform, she found her voice. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Name's Lucas Xavier," he said instead of answering her question. "Most folks call me Luke, and you are Penelope Reed." "Everyone calls me Penny." "Well, Miss Reed, let's get you somewhere safe. Then we can talk." Luke led her to a magnificent chestnut stallion waiting patiently at the edge of town. He helped her mount, then swung up behind her. The warmth of his chest against her back was oddly comforting. "Where are we going?" she asked as they rode out of Silver Creek. I have a place about 3 hours' ride from here, unless there's somewhere else you'd prefer. Penelope thought of her family's ranch, now in Thornton's possession. I have nowhere else to go. Then you'll stay with me until you figure out your next steps. They rode in silence for a while, the rhythmic hoofbeats and the occasional cry of a hawk the only sounds breaking the quiet of the open range. Penelope's mind whirled with questions, but exhaustion gradually overtook her, and she found herself leaning back against Luke's solid frame, her eyelids growing heavy. "It's all right," she heard him say softly. "Rest now, you're safe." For the first time in weeks, Penelope allowed herself to believe it might be true. When Penelope awoke, the sun was hanging low in the western sky, casting long shadows across the land. They were approaching a modest but well-maintained ranch house nestled in a small valley with a creek running nearby. A barn and corral stood to one side, and she could see cattle grazing on the hillsides. "This is yours?" she asked, sitting up straighter. "It's not much, but it's mine. Been working it for 5 years now." As they drew closer, a woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was gray-haired and round-faced, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "That's Martha Wilson," Luke explained. "She helps me around the place, keeps house. Her husband died in the war and she needed somewhere to stay. We look after each other." Martha hurried toward them as Luke helped Penelope dismount. "I was beginning to worry," Martha called out, then stopped short when she noticed Penelope. "I see you brought company. Martha, this is Miss Penelope Reed. She'll be staying with us for a while. Miss Reed, Martha Wilson." Martha's shrewd eyes took in Penelope's disheveled appearance and the marks on her wrists. Without a word, she stepped forward and took Penelope's arm gently. "Come along, dear. Let's get you cleaned up and into some fresh clothes. I've got stew simmering and you look like you could use a good meal." Penelope glanced back at Luke, who nodded encouragingly. "Go on. Martha will take good care of you. I need to see to the horse." Martha led Penelope into the house, which was simple but comfortable. A fire burned in the hearth despite the summer heat, and the smell of cooking food made Penelope's stomach growl audibly. "When was the last time you ate properly, child?" Martha asked, clucking her tongue. "I can't remember," Penelope admitted. Martha shook her head disapprovingly. "Well, we'll fix that, but first a bath. I'll heat some water." While Martha busied herself with preparations, Penelope took in her surroundings. The main room held a table, some chairs, and a small bookshelf filled with well-worn volumes. Through a doorway, she glimpsed what must be Luke's bedroom, sparse but tidy. "The spare room is through here," Martha said, noticing her gaze. "It's small, but it's yours for as long as you need it." Half an hour later, Penelope was soaking in a copper tub, the warm water soothing her aching body. Martha had provided a clean dress, simple but well-made, and had tactfully withdrawn to give her privacy. As she washed away the grime of captivity, Penelope allowed herself to cry for the first time, silent tears mingling with the bathwater. By the time she emerged, dressed in Martha's loaned clothes, she felt somewhat restored. Luke had returned from the barn and was seated at the table, his hat hung on a peg by the door. He stood when she entered. "You look much better, Miss Reed. Please call me Penny." She took the chair he offered. "And thank you for everything." Martha served the stew rich with beef and vegetables along with fresh bread. Penelope tried to eat slowly, but hunger got the better of her manners. "Easy now," Martha cautioned. "Your stomach's likely shrunk. Take small bites." Over the meal, Luke asked her about her situation. Penelope told them about her parents' deaths, the drought that had devastated their cattle, and how Thornton had manipulated the situation to seize her property. "He claimed I owed taxes and fees I'd never heard of before. When I couldn't pay, he said I could work off the debt at his home." Her voice hardened. His intentions became clear quickly enough. "When I refused his advances, he had me locked up, then decided to auction me off to recover his losses." Luke's jaw clenched. "That man has no right to call himself civilized." "Unfortunately, he has powerful friends, including Judge Harmon." "Ah," Luke nodded grimly. "That explains the lack of legal intervention." "What will you do now, dear?" Martha asked. Penelope stared down at her bowl. "I don't know. I have no money, no property, no family." "You can stay here," Luke said firmly, "for as long as you need." I couldn't impose, it's not an imposition. Martha could use the help and I've got plenty of space. Martha smiled. He's right, these old bones aren't what they used to be. Having another pair of hands around would be a blessing. I don't know how to thank you. No need, Luke said simply. Now you should get some rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to figure out the rest. That night, in the small but comfortable bedroom Martha had prepared, Penelope lay awake long after the household had gone quiet. The events of the day seemed almost unreal. Yesterday, she'd been a prisoner. Today, she was free thanks to a stranger's unexpected kindness. She wondered what Luke's true motivations might be, but something in his straightforward manner inspired trust. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her, and she fell into the deepest sleep she'd had in months. The following days established a routine. Penelope helped Martha with household tasks: cooking, cleaning, mending. She discovered that Luke was not only a rancher but also a skilled carpenter, crafting furniture that he occasionally sold in town. His small herd of cattle provided enough income to live comfortably, if modestly. One morning, about a week after her arrival, Penelope was hanging laundry when Luke approached, leading a gentle-looking bay mare. "Do you ride?" he asked. "Since I was a child. My father taught me. This is Daisy. She's yours if you want her." Penelope's eyes widened. "I can't accept such a gift." "Not a gift," Luke corrected. "Consider her on loan. A woman needs her independence, and that includes being able to get around." Tentatively, Penelope reached out to stroke the mare's velvety nose. Daisy nickered softly. "See, she likes you already." That afternoon, they rode together across Luke's property. The land wasn't vast, but it was beautiful rolling hills dotted with wildflowers, a creek that bubbled over stones, stands of aspen that would turn golden come fall. "How did you come to own this place?" Penelope asked as they paused to rest the horses. Luke's expression grew distant. "I fought in the war Union side. Afterward, I drifted west like many others, tried my hand at mining but didn't care for it. Worked as a ranch hand for a few years, saved every penny. When old man Jenkins decided to sell this place and move to California, I had just enough to buy it." "You've done well with it," he shrugged. "It's enough for me. I'm not one for ambition or getting rich, just want to live my life in peace. That's all anyone should ask for." Luke studied her face for a moment. "What about you? What did you want before all this happened?" Penelope considered the question. "I wanted to keep my family's ranch going. It was all I had left of them, but beyond that," she smiled ruefully. "I used to dream of traveling. My mother had books about Paris and London. I thought maybe someday. Dreams are good things to hold on to, even impossible ones, especially those. They keep us moving forward." As they continued their ride, Penelope found herself watching Luke, the confident way he sat his horse, the gentle commands he gave, the quiet strength he exuded. For the first time since her ordeal began, she felt a flutter of something other than fear or despair. The weeks passed, and summer began to give way to early autumn. Penelope's strength returned, along with her spirit. She found joy in simple things: the satisfaction of bread baked to golden perfection, the peace of evenings spent on the porch watching the sunset, the comfort of Martha's stories about her late husband and their life together. And increasingly, there was Luke. Though he spent long days working the ranch, he always made time to talk with her in the evenings. Sometimes they discussed books. She discovered he was well-read despite his lack of formal education. Other times, they simply sat in companionable silence, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. One evening, as they sat on the porch steps, Luke asked, "Have you given any thought to what you might want to do? In the future, I mean." The question caught her off guard. She had been so focused on recovering from her ordeal that she hadn't looked beyond each day as it came. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "Part of me wants to fight for my family's ranch, but Thornton's hold on it seems unbreakable." "Nothing's unbreakable," Luke said quietly. "Not if you're determined enough." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, or something deeper. The moment was broken by the sound of hooves approaching. Luke was on his feet instantly, hand moving to the revolver he wore even at home. "Stay here," he told her, stepping off the porch. A rider appeared in the gathering darkness, a young man on a lathered horse. "Mr. Xavier," the rider called out. "That's me." I've got news you should hear. Thornton's gathering men. Word is he's coming for the woman. Penelope felt ice form in her veins. Luke's expression hardened. When? Tomorrow, maybe the day after. He's claiming she stole from him before running off. Luke pulled a coin from his pocket and tossed it to the young man. Thanks for the warning, Tim. You'd best get on home now. After the rider departed, Luke returned to the porch. We need to prepare. This is my fight, Penelope protested. I won't bring danger to you and Martha. It became my fight when I took you from that auction. His voice was firm. Besides, men like Thornton need to be stood up to, or they'll never stop. Inside, they explained the situation to Martha, who immediately began gathering supplies. I knew that Thornton was trouble, she muttered, always lording over everyone with his money. Martha, I want you to ride to the Patterson place at first light, Luke said. It's safer there until this blows over. Martha nodded, though her expression showed she wasn't happy about leaving them. After she retired for the night, Luke and Penelope sat at the table, planning their defense. I won't lie to you, Penny. This could get ugly. I'm not afraid, she said, though her hands trembled slightly. Luke reached across the table and took her hands in his. You're the bravest woman I've ever known. His touch sent warmth through her despite the circumstances. I don't feel brave. I feel like I've brought a storm down on your home. Sometimes storms clear the air. His thumbs traced small circles on her palms. There's something you should know. I didn't happen upon that auction by chance. Penelope frowned. What do you mean? I'd heard about what Thornton was doing not just to you, but to others. Foreclosing on properties during hard times, manipulating debts, even arranging so-called auctions before. I went there that day intending to stop it. You knew about me beforehand? Luke nodded. Only that Thornton had taken a young woman's ranch and was holding her against her will. I didn't know it was you specifically, so you were just being a good Samaritan, at first. His eyes held hers steadily. But it became something else the moment I saw you standing there, proud despite everything they'd done to you. Penelope's heart quickened. What did it become? Before he could answer, they heard a noise outside, the distant but unmistakable sound of horses approaching. They're coming earlier than we thought, Luke said, rising swiftly. Wake Martha. We need to move quickly. The next hour was a blur of activity. Martha was roused and sent off on the quietest route to the neighboring ranch. Luke and Penelope prepared the house boarding windows, positioning furniture as barriers, checking the ammunition for Luke's rifle and revolver. Can you shoot? He asked, offering her a small derringer. My father taught me, though I've never shot at a person. Let's hope you don't have to start now. By the time the riders arrived, Penelope counted 7 men, including Thornton. Luke had positioned them strategically. He stood on the porch, rifle in hand but pointed at the ground, while Penelope watched from a window, derringer ready. Xavier. Thornton called out, We've come for the Reed woman. She's a thief and a runaway debtor. She's neither, Luke replied calmly, and she's under my protection. Thornton sneered. 1 man against 7, those aren't good odds, cowboy. Better than you think. I've sent for the federal marshal. Should be here by morning. This was a bluff. They'd had no time to send for help, but Thornton's momentary hesitation suggested it had hit its mark. You're lying. Am I? Want to find out. Or maybe you'd like to explain to him how you're kidnapping women and selling them at illegal auctions. The men behind Thornton shifted uncomfortably. Clearly, not all were fully committed to his cause. She owes me money, Thornton insisted, though with less conviction. Then file a proper claim with the court, but you won't, because you know your debts wouldn't stand up to real scrutiny. One of the riders leaned over to whisper something to Thornton, who scowled in response. This isn't over, he finally said. We'll be back with the sheriff. You do that, Luke replied, and I'll be waiting with documentation of your illegal activities. I'm sure the territorial governor would be interested to hear about a banker conducting human auctions. Thornton's face contorted with rage, but he was trapped by his own criminal actions. With a violent jerk on his reins, he turned his horse. Let's go, boys. They watched until the riders disappeared into the darkness. Will they be back? Penelope asked, joining Luke on the porch. Not tonight. Thornton's too smart to risk a confrontation that might bring legal attention to his activities, but he won't give up easily. Penelope leaned against the porch railing, suddenly exhausted. I've caused you nothing but trouble. Luke turned to face her. That's not true. No, you've spent money on me, risked your life for me, and now your home is threatened because of me. Penny. His voice was gentle as he moved closer. Before you came, I had a house. Now I have a home. The simple statement stole her breath. What are you saying? I'm saying that these past weeks with you here, they've been the happiest of my life. He reached up to touch her cheek. I didn't save you that day. You saved me from a life half-lived. Penelope leaned into his touch, her heart racing. I thought I'd lost everything when Thornton took my ranch. I never imagined I might find something more precious. Under the vast canopy of stars, Luke bent his head and kissed her. It was gentle at first, a question more than a demand. When she responded, wrapping her arms around his neck, the kiss deepened, becoming a promise of things to come. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Luke pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, Penny. I think I have since that first day. I love you too, she whispered. Though I'm not sure when it happened, it feels like I've always loved you. They spent the night keeping watch together, talking of the future, of possibilities they'd never considered before. By morning, they had a plan. 3 days later, they rode into the territorial capital together. Luke had connections, their friends from his army days who now worked in government. One in particular, James Foster, had become a legal advisor to the governor. Lucas Xavier, as I live and breathe, Foster greeted them in his office. It's been, 3 years? Too long, Jim. Luke introduced Penelope, explaining their situation. Foster listened intently, his expression growing grave. What Thornton's done is clearly illegal, but proving it will be difficult, especially with Judge Harmon in his pocket. We don't need to prove everything, Luke said. Just enough to get him investigated. Once that happens, others will come forward. You sound very certain. Bullies like Thornton always leave a trail of victims. They just need to know it's safe to speak up. Foster nodded thoughtfully. I might be able to help. The governor's been looking for an excuse to clean up some of the corruption in the outlying counties. Over the next week, they gathered evidence and testimonies. Other victims of Thornton's schemes were found: farmers who'd lost land under suspicious circumstances, women who'd been pressured or threatened. Slowly, a case was built. The turning point came when the county sheriff, perhaps seeing which way the wind was blowing, decided to save his own skin by providing a sworn statement about Thornton's activities, including the illegal auctions. By month's end, Thornton was arrested and Judge Harmon was under investigation. The governor himself signed the order restoring Penelope's property to her. I can't believe it's really happening, she said as they rode back toward Silver Creek, the legal documents safely tucked in Luke's saddlebag. Believe it. By this time tomorrow, you'll be standing on your family's land again. Penelope studied his profile. Our land. Luke turned to her, questioning. I want you with me, Luke, if you're willing to leave your ranch. I'd follow you anywhere, he smiled, but we don't have to choose. My place isn't large, but it's good land. We could run both properties, build something together. The possibility of a shared future one neither of them had dared imagine months earlier filled her with joy. The homecoming to the Reed Ranch was bittersweet. The buildings had been neglected during Thornton's brief ownership, and it would take work to restore them. But the land itself remained rolling pastures her father had loved, the creek where she'd learned to swim, the old oak tree where her mother had often read to her. It needs some attention, Luke observed as they walked the property together. Everything worth having does, Penelope replied, slipping her hand into his. They were married that autumn, with Martha and the Pattersons in attendance, along with Foster and a few of Luke's other friends. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, held beneath the old oak tree on the Reed property. I, Lucas, take you, Penelope, to be my lawfully wedded wife, he vowed, his voice steady and sure. I promise to stand beside you, never above or below. You belong only to yourself, but I give myself freely to you, now and always. Tears shimmered in Penelope's eyes as she repeated her own vows, adding, You found me when I was lost and showed me that freedom isn't just about breaking chain, it's about choosing where and how to build a life. I choose you, Lucas Xavier, today and every day. Their life together wasn't without challenges. The work of running two properties proved demanding, especially when drought returned the following summer. But they faced each obstacle together, drawing strength from each other. A year after their wedding, Penelope gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth Martha, honoring both their mothers. Martha, who had become like family, moved permanently to the Reed Ranch to help with the baby and household. As Penelope watched Luke cradle their daughter one evening, singing softly to her in the glow of the hearth fire, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From chains and an auction block to this moment of pure contentment, it seemed almost unbelievable. "What are you thinking about?" Luke asked, noticing her gaze, about how the worst day of my life led to the best ones. She joined them by the fire, leaning against his shoulder. About how sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. Luke pressed a kiss to her temple. "I like our story, so do I." Penelope smiled, looking around at the home they'd built together, not just the physical structure, but the love and trust that filled it. And the best part is, we're still writing it. Outside, the Colorado night spread its star-filled canopy over their land. Inside, the fire crackled, casting its warm light over a family forged not by ownership or obligation, but by choice and love, the strongest bonds of all.